Pepe, I think what we are witnessing in the Trump administration is a combination of hubris and stupidity, because it's not just about, the same day that Pete Hegseth was talking about that the leadership in Iran is hiding, has the leadership has gone into hiding, or they're they have gone underground. We've seen the Iranian
It
president
was in the streets.
all on the streets. It's somehow he's talking about these people, they're hiding like rats. This sort of language, and getting together with Donald Trump arguing that these people are sick because of their genetics, because they're not like us. This is the same sort of attitude as the Benjamin Netanyahu's government. They're calling Palestinians Amalek.
Yes.
Amalek, significant, it's the same. It's a racist comment. But when it comes to the stupidity, and as the Trump administration somehow feels that the Chinese government would help him against Iran, as the China is witnessing, it's just seeing how the United States is diminishing its picture, its power, and it's destroying its picture all around the world. Why do they need to help you? Even your partners in, your vassals in Europe, they don't want to help you. How come you bring China to the scene and you're asking China to do that? It's unbelievable, the level of,
Stupidity.
just beyond belief. Yeah. How what do you make of the Trump administration and the way that they're trying somehow to manipulate the mainstream media?
I'm more interested in the look. Maybe I'm getting too old, Nima, in your audience, but look, I have what 42 years as a foreign correspondent all across the planet, everywhere that matters. I saw that I had seen all sorts of shit, but this goes beyond anything. So I don't even bother to follow the details anymore. My inbox is flooded with shit every day because I am on mailing list of every think tank you can imagine, publications that I stopped subscribing, like the Washington Post or the Economist. I still receive shit all the time. So the most important thing and the most challenging is the Chinese reaction. And it's not the Chinese reaction, is how the Chinese have been playing the game, which is what I put it on the headline of my column. How Iran and China have gamed the chessboard, and it's a beauty to see now. So backtrack years ago, China was building what they never admit outright because they know how it's going to be interpreting, in Washington, how to overhaul the international system, the system of international relations, to the benefit of China, to the benefit of the global South. So they start building multilateral organizations. They are big. Their incentives towards BRICS and the SCO to make BRICS and SCO much more consequent, right? They keep expanding the Belt and Road Initiative, the New Silk Roads. They turbocharge their diplomacy. Their diplomacy now is much more active and proactive than before, when it was basically passive and reactive. Not anymore. And of course, they are working very closely, especially with Russia, into organizing an alternative system or a payment settlement system inside BRICS and outside BRICS. The CIPS, the China International Paying System, which, by the way, is being used by Iran to pay what they buy from China, and it's used by China to pay Iran in yuans for the energy that they buy from Iran. CIPS now is being, if I'm not mistaken, over 150 nations are already, if not direct members, but they are getting there. They're going to start to use CIPS sooner rather than later. So they don't even need BRICS for that. If BRICS, because of the internal contradictions of BRICS, cannot, especially this year where the traitor Indian government is hosting the BRICS summit later this year in New Delhi, they cannot get into an agreement of alternative payment system, which of their mechanisms they all agree upon, etc. China is already sailing with SIPs, and more countries in the global south will start settling their trade with China in SIPs. So China has been building this system, especially since Xi Jinping came to power in 2012. The New Silk Road, the Belt and Road Initiative, was launched in 2013. It was only 1 year in power for Xi. And then it started to pick up speed very, very, very fast. Now you run with, and this is something that, of course, we will never have an official confirmation in Tehran or in Beijing, but it's obvious that they discuss this at the highest level. It's obvious. It's part of their strategic partnership. Iran offers to China on a plate the single move that is capable of turning the petrodollar upside down. It did not come from China. It did not come from BRICS. It did not come from an alternative payment system. It came from a country under war, attacked by the so-called most powerful army on the planet, fighting to survive, and still in the middle of the war, they come up with the definitive move, which people in the US with a brain knew it would happen. I think I told you and many other podcasts that this is something that many of us were discussing in 2017, 2018, 2019, many years ago, even before COVID. What would happen if the Strait of Hormuz is blocked? And that comes back to those Goldman Sachs projections that oil could reach not 100, 150, which could be in the next few days, not 200, which could be in the next 2 weeks, but 700. And then it's the total collapse of the global economy. And we are on that road already. So Iran pulls one move, which certainly was discussed with China, because don't forget, when Iran pulled that move, they had already clinched the deal with China, authorizing free passage for any tanker delivering energy to China. And with this one move, the whole Ponzi scheme may collapse. That's why, once again, as I opted to write a first short column, but just to give an idea to our readers how mind-bogglingly game-changing this whole thing is. And it takes one single move, and it doesn't take a nuclear bomb, it doesn't take ballistic missiles in the middle of a war, which explains the absolute desperation of the Americans now. Because this is something they cannot even revert, Nima. They cannot have a strike force to send to Hormuz. They're going to be decimated if they do that. Everybody knows that. The southern shore of the Persian Gulf, the Iranian shore, is crammed with anti-ship missiles, with zillions of drones, with mines that have not even installed yet, with those fast boats that can wreak havoc around any tanker. That's it. They have zillions of ways of blocking even further passage in the Strait of Hormuz. So that's what it takes. You choose your choke point, you strangle it, and that's it. You have the empire like this, hanging by a thread. And that's where we are now. It is immensely impressive. And of course, we could say that this is the culmination of the way China has been playing the game, has been gaming the chessboard all the time. And that's why I made an analogy, with Wei Qi. which Go, the game of Go. When you control the chessboard, the game plays by itself.
Yeah.
So China was already controlling the chessboard. So this latest Iranian move, even if it was not foreseen before, of course, but strategically the Chinese have thought about it. If that happens, how do we profit from it? Well, you gain the chessboard, so the chessboard would arrive at this particular juncture. You can corner the empire, you can surround your enemy with just one move. And that's why this is analogically and metaphorically, it's beautiful because it's a mix of chess that Iranians play better than almost anybody and Go. It's a mix of chess and Go. Absolutely fascinating. And now the empire is hanging by a thread in total desperation. And the people who had foreseen that, they don't have a say in government. You can ask a lot of Goldman Sachs analysts. They knew this was coming. You can ask, like at the time, for instance, we were in touch with Zoltan Poznar when he was the chief analyst of Credit Suisse. Zoltan wrote about this in detail. But now it's too late.
Pepe, I think if it was Donald Trump, running Iran, he would ask any country to pay him before passing the Strait of Hormuz. But
yes, exactly. And the Iranians are not asking for money.
No,
they're asking for, okay, come to us, we discuss. If we think it's okay, you can go. You don't have to pay us anything.
I think the other move
that's why it is an invisible toll booth. It's a toll booth where you don't need to insert your credit card in the machine to get a ticket and go through. No, you need to talk to the owner.
The other move that could be, somehow a facilitator to petro yuan would be Iran asking all of these countries to sell their oil and gas by petro yuan, by yuan, and then using the SIPs, instead of using SWIFT. And these are
the next stage. Yeah, this is the next stage, Anima. And this is something that the Chinese can, with the Chinese finesse, very sophisticated, can suggest to the people, and especially the GCC petromonarchies. Well, of course, the Chinese already told Saudi Arabia about that. The Chinese already told Saudi Arabia that sooner or later, everything that we buy from you is going to be petro yuan. The Saudis could not do that before because obviously they would be literally invaded by the Americans in 24 hours and all their money, which is in London, New York, would be confiscated. But from now on, all bets are off. And if that's one of the major ifs ahead. All these American bases totally destroyed in West Asia. They won't be rebuilt, probably. So this means no more empire of bases in West Asia. The GCC will need a new umbrella, a new security umbrella, especially because if they have a brain and they look at what the American umbrella did for them now, if they have a brain, they are learning their lesson. And who is going to provide that umbrella in the future? There are only two candidates, Russia and China. There you go. Once again. But this is too far away from where we are at the moment. We are at stage number 1, which is the possible beginning of the end of the petrodollar. And that already in itself is enormous.
I think the move in Ukraine is being, in the process of, being, getting perfect with the conflict in the West Asia, because somehow all of these Arab states would ask themselves, so what is the main point of the US bases in our countries if they're not providing us with security? So who's able to do that? And the Iranian generals they're talking about, they're not, it doesn't matter what would happen with this war on Iran. they're not going to accept any U.S. bases in these countries. I don't see, Pepe, the United States gaining anything as time goes by. And what would be the point of getting back to Saudi Arabia? What is the gain? What is the benefit for the Saudi Arabia? What are they gonna do for Saudi Arabia? These are questions right now in the mind of the leaders in these countries. So who's gonna replace the United States? Or maybe we have.
Assuming they have a brain, Nima, most of them don't. Don't forget, these are ruthless gangsters, most of them. One family ruling the whole nation, artificial nations, most of them. MBS, and this is very hard to confirm, but according to many of our sources who have access to the House of Saud, he is still in bed with the Americans. This means against Iran. There's no evidence that he's trying even to perform a mediator role. So some of them don't have brains at all, and don't expect anything really intelligent coming from MBZ in the Emirates. He was basically sitting on a gigantic laundering machine and a gigantic scam, of course, profiting the Americans. He doesn't have a plan B. And now his business model for Dubai specifically is dead. And it may be in Abu Dhabi as well. If the Iranians decide that that's it, let's rid Abu Dhabi oil production from the map, which is something they can do any minute. So we should not put any trust on these people. Maybe the Qataris, because the Qataris are, well, I had a few interactions with the Qataris, and some of them, even though, of course, they are completely brainwashed by the Anglo-American elites, especially the Anglo elites, and some of them the old French elites, they may see that, okay, that's it, let's do something else, and at least be good neighbors with Iran, at least. And they are going to invest their money in, Qatar is already doing that. They're investing most of their funds in Europe. So it's different. Bahrain is dead. Bahrain doesn't count for it. Bahrain now is collapsing in front of our eyes. So there will be a major reorganization of the GCC. We still don't know where, but obviously anybody that thinks 2 seconds about what happened will know that the American protection umbrella is dead and probably is not coming back. And this, once again, coming back to our major theme, this was the other side of the petrodollar. The other side of the petrodollar was we, the most powerful army in the history of the galaxies of Star Wars, will protect you. So basically, the GCC, they were buying protection from the Americans. Look what is happening now.
Pepe, here is what the U.S. Energy Secretary said about the Strait of Hormuz.
Oh my God, this is an absolute asshole. Oh my God, this is, yes, please play it, please. Sorry.
There's a big debate over whether you all were prepared for what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. If you were prepared, why is the Strait of Hormuz effectively closed right now?
Because it's right near the Iranian shoreline. The world is abundantly supplied with oil and energy. We knew there would be a short-term disruption in energy flows. And to hear Chuck Schumer say that we didn't is just so, he knows how foolish that is. And to say stuff to try to undermine the United States in the midst of a world-changing conflict just boggles my mind. But this mission was carefully planned out. It's been superbly executed. On the other side, we'll be in a much better place. The greatest driver of terrorism in the world, the greatest threat to global energy supplies will be defanged. Yes, we have disruption to get there, but we're going to be in a much, much better place in the not too distant future.
Mr. Secretary, let's talk about Russia. The Treasury Department temporarily lifting sanctions on.
Yeah.
No comments, Nima. It's an imbecile. It's pointless. He spells it out his stupidity by himself. So we don't need to comment on that.
Yeah, but the greater question, Pepe, would be Russia and how is the conflict in Ukraine coming to the conflict with Iran, the two wars that are happening. The combination of both is somehow reshaping Russian strategy. How do you see Russia, the way that Russia sees the conflict in the West Asia?
Let's wait. It's too early to tell. If I'm back in Russia next month, I hope I'll be able to ask this in person to a lot of people that matter. But I can't imagine nowadays the echoes that I'm getting is there's a lot of discomfort in Moscow deciding circles about the whole thing. But of course, at the same time, they know that this is the same war, by the way. It's not two different wars. It's the same war. The same war against Russia and against Iran. Not by accident, two of the existential threats to the empire, according to their own national security strategy, even if they try to alleviate a little bit in the last redaction. Two top BRICS, interlinked, and two top proponents of a new system of international relations. So it's a war against two top BRICS, three top BRICS, because it's also against China. So this is de facto hot war against the BRICS. We thought it would take a long time for this the stage of hybrid war to get into hot. It got there in a flash. So people in positions of power in Moscow, they know this very, very well. There is a very, very serious debate on what to do with Ukraine now. Many people very well positioned, including people in the intel apparatus, said, that's it. Let's go for the head of the snake. That's it. It took too long. Let's finish this war now. But that's not the strategy of President Putin. So the least we can expect is a serious debate at the highest levels, at the Security Council level in Russia, on are we going to change our strategy now? Are we going to keep doing what we're doing but more forceful? Or are we going to launch a super offensive and finish this off before the end of the year? Or, of course, what some, I would say, more well-informed, patriotic, serious people, but already exasperated, are saying, no, that's it. Let's finish it off now. So, the debate is on. I hope I can have more from the inside next month.
Does it mean that they're feeling that the situation with the negotiations with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner is leading nowhere?
Nobody believes in these negotiations, Nima, especially now. The same two, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, were negotiating with the Iranians, and we saw what happened. The same two. Jared Kushner cannot negotiate how to buy a hot dog on Fifth Avenue in New York City. And now he's posing as a bloody diplomat. Witkoff is slightly more prepared. But still, come on, he's a rookie. He doesn't understand how diplomacy works. And he's dealing with the best diplomatic corps on the planet, the Russians. Not to mention the best prepared leader in the world, Vladimir Putin. It's pathetic. So obviously, because the Russians are so polite, so respectful of diplomatic norms and diplomatic processes, they play along. But now it's different. If they're interested in having a real solution to their Ukraine problem, let's put it this way, they're going to have to change their strategy. Otherwise, this war could go on for not for another year, for another 2, 3, 4 years. because the Europeans, it's obvious the European position is not going to change, even if they don't have money to pay for the war. Even if Trump, Neo Caligula, Neo Crassus, whatever, decides to abandon them, which he won't. The US will be leading from behind. But NATO is the same thing. NATO's armies are a joke compared to a battle-hardened army like the Russians have now. But they still insist that the war will keep going, and they are going to rearm because there will be war against Russia by 2030, according to NATO internal documents. It's complete, the madness did not disappear because of the war on Iran.
I think before wrapping up, Pepe, the other aspect of the conflict of the war would be if Houthis or Yemenis decide to close the Bab al-Mandab, the Red Sea. That would be hugely influential. And do you see that happening anytime soon?
Yes,
or?
It's quite possible. There are some our contacts in Sana. There are some echoes. They are not saying that explicitly. They are just saying it's on the table. We may decide to get into the war side by side with Iran. And of course, the first thing they'll do is to close the Bab al-Mandeb. And by extension, the Red Sea. So that's it. They can do it. If that happens, then it's, in terms of the global economy, then it's mega, because we are in the chaos moment. It's going to be mega chaos, and they can do it. Yeah. And of course, and if they are attacked by Israel, then all bets are off. Then they will go all the way.
Yeah.
Our friend Larry, this is amazing.
Brother Pepe. Hey, man. You've been doing
good work. ¿Qué tal, cabrón? ¿Cómo estás?
Aguantando.
Aguantando. Wonderful. I love your ersatz porteño accent. It's wonderful.
I got that it's Spanish with an Italian accent, okay?
That's beautiful.
So,
okay, before I leave, Larry, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Maybe to launch your next hour. Give me your, how could I put it, Cheech and Chong interpretation of the Trump Armada going to liberate the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, he's still looking for it, Come on, everybody, let's get him. Let's go get him charged. He looks behind, nobody's there.
There's nobody there.
I'm watching. You'd like to, if people weren't dying, and if this wasn't so much destruction being caused, this would be hilarious. This would be like a Monty Python skit on cocaine, just amped up and just crazy. And they keep jumping from, narrative to narrative. And lying throughout. For example, they claimed that those two KC-135s ran into each other and the one plane crashed. No, that didn't. It was shot down. I mean, I've got that confirmed. It was shot down. They are effectively out now of THAAD missiles and Patriot 3, the PAC-3s. They're out, depleted. And they don't seem to, nobody seems to grasp that. So, I mean, it's the lie after lie being presented in this narrative, and they're still waiting for Iran to surrender. We got to run right where we want them. And Iran is like, okay, you started this, we'll finish it. And the fact that I guess CIA tried to brief Trump on the danger of closing the Strait of Hormuz. So the good news is CIA was doing its job. But as is typical of so many of these instances, the president decides, I know best, and they ignore the intelligence. At which point now the intelligence community is starting to leak out. Now, we told him, he just ignored it. So I don't see how Trump gets out of this, frankly.
Well, the CIA is covering their asses now. This is what they
Yep.
do, right? Larry? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
They obviously told him this is the people with an IQ over 10 in the Pentagon also know it because they gamed it before. No?
yeah, there, you see when leaks, the Wall Street Journal put out an article pretty detailed about how, Trump was warned about this and warned about that. So whenever you see that, that is, the way the game is played in Washington is if the policy's going great and everybody agrees on it, there are no leaks. Or only leaks that put the administration in the most favorable light. But when it's going south, then everybody, it's like every man for themselves, every man and woman for themselves. And so they'll start leaking and putting out the information about what's really going on. And Trump can try as hard as he wants to try to cover that up, but he can't do it.